may have to miss this can catch up, or you can review back. Max is behind the scenes answering questions as we go, so please pop those in. And so we had a good first session getting our head around what is this thing, road safety audit? And we delved into that a little bit. We showed quite a few sort of examples of common issues and how we write those up. Now, those module 1 slides are going to be very important for you when you come to the point of actually undertaking a road safety audit or starting to write up findings, because we want you to use that formula that we talked about, or the recipe of what elements we would like to see in the written up finding. And so really, in order to get a good mark in this course or pass this course, you need to follow that recipe as you write up your findings. Go through the energy, safe system energy, risk rating, recommendation, and categorization. Now, we do give you a template of a road safety audit, so you can follow that as you go about doing these yourselves. So a similar sort of format. I'm going to go through some theory. I'm going to put up some examples. I'm going to ask you some questions. We'll have a few polls pop up. Today, we're going to cover off the stages of road safety audit, the steps in road safety audit, and also the first of our particular road users that we delve into, and they will be pedestrians. So we talked about there the different, very briefly touched on this at the end of last session, and we said that there's this road safety audit process we go through, and it can be done at different stages within a project. Okay, so we could do the pre-construction before the building. So this is design, planning, the feasibility is that early planning stage, preliminary being when some concepts have been developed, and then the detailed design being the full design set. Or during construction and roadworks, traffic management's happening and all of that. And just before they open the road, if it's a greenfield site. By greenfields, I mean, absolutely new road. Most of the work happening on our around our road network is what we would call brownfield, so upgrading existing roads and the like. And so you really usually don't do a pre-opening of those, because it's almost sort of live to traffic to a degree with roadworks. It's more what we call a post-opening. So really quickly, when it opens, the auditor's there just checking everything. And then we have that existing conditions and thematic road safety audits. But no matter which one of these you're doing, you follow the same road safety audit process. And it's got 8 steps. And this module, I'm going to take you through those 8 steps of the road safety audit process, and point you at where you can find further information on these. Okay, so the process is fairly straightforward. I mean, you'll get to know it quite well over time. It's got those 8 steps. It does take time. The whole process does take time, and you really need to factor that in. It's not a super quick thing to do an audit. And it's really adding value to the project. So a bit of time is okay. Really has to be an integral part of design processes and can be used for other things. Now, there's a directional sign. We know directional signs are green in Australia and New Zealand. We use a green directional sign. Actually, I'm just having a mental blank as to whether New Zealand uses green as well. I'm pretty sure they do. Certainly all of Australia uses a green directional sign, and we can see that one. I'll give a prize to somebody who can point out what it's a little bit odd and wrong about that sign. And I'll come back to that, Max, actually. I'm going to keep going, but I'll come back to it. But have a ponder of that one, everybody, and pop in your ideas. And Max, you can keep a track of it. I will come back to it, I promise. Don't forget to count your wallies, of course. Okay, the steps. Here are the 8 steps. And I've taken this straight out of the Austra's Guide to Road Safety, Part 6A, Implementation of Road Safety Audits. and I will take you through these. But there's the selection of the audit team is the first step. There's the exchange of information. There's the commencement meeting, which is part of the exchange of information. There's the reviewing all the documents and getting out there and inspecting the site during the daytime and the nighttime. There's the writing up of the audit report and some sort of completion meeting, responding to the audit report, and implementing changes. So there are steps. I'm going to take you through these one at a time now and just explore them in a little more detail. Okay, selecting the audit team. Now, this is the responsibility of the client, the project manager, the road authority representative, or whoever it is. They select the audit team. Usually in practice, the way it's done is that they select a consultancy or they select an individual that they know is an approved, accredited, pre-qualified road safety auditor, and they sort of form a team of people that they want, but the client should be aware of who the team is. Everybody really needs to understand that process of a road safety audit, but what we require is one senior road safety auditor to lead the team. Then we can have others, which we call road safety auditors, and then there could be others that are what we would call observers or trainees who have not done this course, have not registered, and are not a recognised road safety auditor, but they may add value to the audit, or they may be really learning themselves. I'll tell you in a second what a senior auditor is, because that might be an immediate question you've got. But a few tips here. We want to ensure that it's a team of auditors. It's almost never a one-person audit, maybe except a very small project or low volume, low risk style project. But the Austroads Guide very heavily pushes towards an audit team. And you'll see when the next one comes out, which is in the next few months, it really even strengthens that. It says it's a team. And what is a team? Team is more than one person. The current one, there's this sort of little get out clause where you could do it as a one-person auditor. Ensure all team members are independent. We talked about the importance of independence. And only a senior road safety auditor should lead the audit team. Now, ideally, in an ideal world, you would have this team of very diverse people in terms of their road safety experience, their profession, their ages, how they think about different road users, have males, females, and the reality is though sometimes you get what you can put together in a short period of time and get out there. But here's an example of an audit team I was putting together, and I had myself and then Michael and Johan, and we all we're all about the same age. We all worked for Vic Roads for a long part of our life. We've all got very similar views of the world. So I asked Wendy to come along. Wendy, a bit older than us, female, and scooter rider, and a very sort of different view of the network to get that very different perspective. So that's nice to do. As I say, practical reality means it can be challenging sometimes, but I'm giving you the ideal scenario here. Okay, in terms of the senior road safety auditor, our last module covers this. How do you become a road safety auditor? I mean, obviously this course is a big step in that direction, but you need to register on some government websites and things like that. And really the thing is you will enter in as a road safety auditor, and then you will graduate up to senior road safety auditor status. It's sort of this graduated process. You need to gain experience doing audits out there under the guidance of experienced senior road safety auditors. That's it. I'll give you the specific requirements in our final module I'm happy to answer questions if there's any burning immediate questions around that. Assess the documents and inspect the site, both daytime and nighttime. Okay, so you may get an absolute mountain of documents. If you're doing a detailed design audit of a reasonable sized project, it can be 100 pages, 183 pages, 583 pages. You can get a lot of information, plus supplementary information about different, planning studies and these sorts of things. You can get a huge amount of information, or you might just get one page with a bit of a sketch on it, and that's it. That's all they've done. It's a very early feasibility style audit of a proposal, and they haven't done much thinking about it, but they want to get some safety eyes on that early on. So it can be quite a varied spectrum of information that you are given. You can ask, and you should ask for more information if you believe there's other things that would help you. They may not have it. You may say, oh, can I have the swept path diagrams? And they say, we don't have it. And you go, okay. And you will note that in your audit, no swept path diagrams were provided. And you can then make some judgment calls based on what you can see. Or, many other things you might be interested in. Inspecting the site, you have to inspect the site in a road safety audit, okay? If you don't inspect the site, it's not a road safety audit. Now, you can do a desktop review, desktop safety assessment, design review. These can all be done from the desk with Street View and all those wonderful things. But for a road safety audit, a site visit is part of the process. No ifs, ands, or buts. It is part of the process. Now, daytime and nighttime is heavily recommended by Austroads, but there is, again, a little bit of a get-out clause on the nighttime. But as a road safety auditor, you are at the discretion of your client. Whoever's engaged you to do that audit, you will do what they tell you. Now, that being said, I've been told only to do a daytime as an auditor, and I went, I'm really worried about how this might look at night. They said, no, we don't have the time to do that, and the resources to do that. So hold on, Max, I'm just going to pause for a second here. If you can take over.
All righty. I've just got a question come through from Chris, just asking, Chris, if you have to go to a site for a design road safety audits, and the answer to that is yes. So the site inspections are certainly recommended regardless of what stage you are actually conducting the audit. So certainly that would be a big prerequisite.
Sorry, Max. Yep, okay. No, and spot on there. Yeah. So that is a template. And now I do sympathise sometimes, and you think, I know the site, or no, like it's so far away. Is this worth it? Like, I'm not saying that a review and going through a similar process of reviewing and looking for issues of a design is not a valuable thing to do. I'm just saying, don't call it a road safety audit. Don't call it a desktop design review, desktop safety review, whatever you want to call it. But the audit process follows these steps. Now, I was saying there, the nighttime one, I would often, they're trying to save money on an audit. They say, oh, don't do the nighttime. It's not going to save you much money at all. But anyway, and then sometimes I just stay out there and have a look at it at night anyway with the team. Usually our process for auditing is, you maybe get there for the afternoon peak, and maybe end of school time if there's schools nearby, and try and see it in that sort of condition. Then go have dinner somewhere, start writing up bits and pieces, and it gets dark, and then you go back and have a look at it at night. Then you might go back to that site another time if there's like a sporting event or something, or it changes land use dramatically. But you're getting the daytime and nighttime in a reasonable sort of window time frame there. So why are we looking at nighttime? I mean, a number of things. It could be land use changes at night. So it could be, you know, an area where there's lots of bars and things, and it could all be very different scenario at night. Lighting could give different views, or you can have a look at this one. You can see there the directional sign and everything's nice and clear, but at night, you can see our directional signs disappeared. So yes, things like sign retroreflectivity. Does the lighting create visual deceit? The way it lines up and those sorts of things. Now, admittedly, like some of those feasibility road safety audits where I've been out there with the audit team, standing in a paddock on a greenfield site at night thinking, I wonder what value we're getting out of this, but it's sort of that 1 in 10 or 20 that something amazing pops out that you go, wow, okay, they're actually going to line the road here, yet the lighting from that other road will come around here, and we're going to have, you know, or the headlights from that are going to be blinding, or that looks like the road goes that way, they're going to make it go this way. How are we going to do that? So yeah, it's just something that you've got to do. Looking at tie-ins of roads, how they meet other roads, you may pick something up. Now, Max, did we have any answers on this?
Yes, we had a few come through. One of them was suggesting that there's a gap in the circle. The road name that's on the bottom leg there, perhaps that's not a common feature. And then Mark is suggesting that it's in reverse.
Okay, so
those prick your ears.
Yeah. I suppose the question is, do we have gaps in roundabout signs in Australia and New Zealand? I don't know. The group's probably driven past thousands of roundabout directional signs. I wonder if they've noticed that. Well, the answer is yes, we do have gaps, but let's give the prize to whoever said it's in reverse.
No problem.
So the gap is a feature of a roundabout sign, but the gap is put to indicate which direction you travel around the roundabout. It's a subtle clue and a subtle reminder that we drive around a roundabout in that clockwise direction. Very sort of subtle little bit there. It's fairly international, actually, to put the gap in. Some countries don't do it, but it's a good way to just ensure people. Now, if you were a road safety auditor and you came across a sign like this existing, or maybe in the design, sure, you're going to report this if you notice it, and hopefully you will. Now, how are you going to risk rate this? I mean, really, what is the risk here of death and serious injury as a result of getting that wrong, putting the gap in? And I'd say probably not much, right? Out in Ballarat, near Ballarat, and you know, lots of roundabouts and but what situation do you think the risk might be elevated a little bit? Pop that into the chat. Any ideas where the risk would go up a bit, where you know this mistake is made? Okay, I think Chris has come in there very early with international drivers, and we're seeing some others with similar stuff. So I'll let you pick some prize winners out of that, Max. But so this is the first roundabout you get to out of Hobart International Airport. When you get your rental car and out you go, this is the first roundabout you hit. Now, again, I don't think this risk is extreme or intolerable, you know, up there in that. But I think the risk is slightly elevated due to the fact that we're going to have internationals. They're probably going to be a bit sleep deprived, or they're very, you know, confused. They've got a new car. They're in the rental car, they're driving along. Maybe some of them are from a country that doesn't do many roundabouts, drives on the wrong side of the road. They're approaching this thing. They're probably not 100% sure what to do, where to go, and the like. And I don't think this helps. I'm still not, as I say, not going to be, it's not the huge, biggest risk we have out there on the road network. But the reason I use this as an example is because the context of the road and where it is and who's using it and those sorts of things helps you to put that risk level to these issues. Bet you'll now drive around and be very much looking at gaps in roundabout signs. That's good. So there's lots of little subtlety on the road network that you may or may not be aware of. Okay, so then you're going to write up your road safety audit report. And there are some key things we need to see in these audit reports. Description of the project and the stage of audit, a list of the information that's been provided to you. This is really important for the reason, especially with what is the design, number, version, issue, and all of that. And I say that from the perspective of you may audit a design and then it gets changed, as it will, throughout the project lifecycle, and then something else will be built. But you're kind of in that project now as a person providing safety advice. And should something go wrong and you find yourself in court and you're being questioned about the road safety audit and why things weren't picked up, you want to be pretty clear on what you looked at and show in your report what you looked at. And I tell you this from experience of being in those positions, and luckily having very good documentation in the audit report to say, well, this is the version of the design that was audited. Here it is. That feature does not exist. Thus, we could not comment on its safety because it was not part of the plan. Somewhere down the track, they've injected this into the project. And they thank you for your time, and they carry on looking at why this was implemented and why other reviews weren't done and the like. You list the team members, you put the dates of the site inspections were carried out. Some people like to put what the weather condition was when they were out there. And then you put a logically arranged list of safety issues. And we're giving you some specifics, templates on that. So you should be able to do that quite easily. So here's a typical table of contents, and we've given you a road safety audit template so you can rebrand it with your own branding. Just make sure you're covering off the same headings and you're doing the same thing. We want industry consistency in road safety auditing. This conforms with the current Austroads guide, so run with that. See a few things extra, photos are usually put in there showing different issues, also showing you went to the site, you were there during the day and the night. So you put a nighttime photo in as well. You often put photos in your table of findings as well if they highlight the issue really well, and some information about the project. So a completion meeting, well, sometimes it's not an actual sit down around the table style meeting, but it's more emailed through, maybe a phone call to check. But if it's a big project, often you'll sit around the table, you talk through the issues that have been identified and the like. And the client, whoever's received that report, responds to the report and implements changes. Now, they don't necessarily need to respond to the road safety audit. Remember, a road safety audit is simply an advice document. Okay. Once you as a road safety auditor hand over your audit report, your job's done. Now, if they want to take on things, and the like, that's great. Maybe they'll call you and have a bit of a chat about a few different findings and those sort of things, but your job's pretty much done. But from a client perspective or a receiver of a road safety audit report, it's really important to go through each of those issues and make comments on whether you will or you won't do it, or how you're going to reduce risk if you're not going to follow it. And so here's some dot points on that. It's given to the project manager, either by email or exit meeting or the like. Everybody should keep their own copies of that. Certainly as an auditor, you want to keep copies of all your past audits, just in case, as I mentioned, you're dragged into court or and questioned on it. You want to be able to find that and make sure you know what you're saying and remind yourself. It could be many years later. The project manager is required to respond to all of them in writing, as I mentioned, not to the audit team, but just have that on record. You do not want an audit report sitting there that has a whole lot of recommendations and no commentary around, yes, they will be done, they won't be done, or the like. I mean, that's going to be a pretty bad thing if an incident was to occur. And responding is this vital part. And it must be part of organisations' sort of processes. So if you're the project manager or the designer, or you're the person that receives that audit report, a couple of things to remember. Your response could become public. However, just do a bit of thinking around the words you can put in there. It's good practice to respond to the audit team, to give them a copy of that. That's very nice for them to receive and to keep on their records and the like. But that is, that's just good practice. It's not absolutely required. There's a couple of things here. If you're the project manager or designer, you receive that audit report. It's been done to help reduce risk on your project, but it is your project. It is your project, right? And you decide what will happen and what won't happen. This is an advice document. The auditors have no legislative power. They cannot force you to do anything. You make decisions on that. And you are dealing with often incredibly complex things with many factors associated with it. And you've got to consider each of these within that context and how you might be able to do it, or how you might be able to do other things that mitigate that risk in one way or another. But it's your project. Max, questions on the steps that I just put through there before I jump into pedestrians? No questions have come through just yet, so feel free to hop onto PEDS. Okay, thank you. We'll pop your questions in as we go, and this session will probably give you time at the end to do today's quiz, catch up on last quiz, finish off your research assignment. At the end of next module, there's going to be a bit of desktop review work because we're going to give you some 360-degree footage. You should have got in your pack your goggles that you can put your phone in and look around like you're on a site, but it's not a site visit. So we'll call it a desktop review, but it's for training purposes anyway. But there's a little bit of work associated with that. So we want you to make sure you're up to speed on everything, have done your quizzes and assignments, and off you go. Okay. Sorry. Okay, Max, we're going to talk about pedestrians now. Nothing else has popped in there?
No, all good, thanks, Ken. Chris has just asked, if we don't have our pack by then, will this be an issue? And no, it won't be an issue. We can upload everything on Moodle, and yes, everything you need will be up online for you. So rest assured, you'll be safe.
Yeah, no, the goggles are just an added extra immersion into the site. You can do it all from a normal computer anyway, or you can just move your phone around and like you're on site, but just a little added extra there. So yeah, no, you'll be fine without. Okay, so in this course, we want to cover off all road users at a level that we have a few insights into what they need and what creates safe travel for these different road users. And we do pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists, heavy vehicles, passenger vehicles, and within the pedestrian suite, we cover quite a raft of road users to a degree. In terms of mobility devices, e-scooters, all sorts of different bits and pieces. And we don't go to anything in a huge amount of detail, but we're just required to ensure that you're out there looking at the road network or designs and you're thinking about all road users. So this module, this bit of the module, we're going to look at the requirements of pedestrians for safe travel, where you can get some technical information regarding infrastructure for pedestrian safety, common road safety audit issues for pedestrians, and understanding basic pedestrian treatment and terminology. But I'll ask you a few things. So there are 4 pedestrian groups at greatest risk. Maybe I'll see who's got some ideas. Pop those into the chat. Max likes giving away prizes, so let's see if we can give away 4 prizes here. So each pop some ideas in there. 4 sort of groups of pedestrians at greatest risk. So I think we've got them all.
They're coming through.
Yeah, they're good. So I have seen them all. So I'll let Max work out the mess of who gets prizes there. It's going to be a little surprise, I think, for people if they get a pack with a prize or not, because they'll be thinking they did. But so let's have a look here. Elderly, the young, the disabled, and the intoxicated. So the elderly obviously have more cognitive challenges in terms of processing information, making those quick choices, and they're slower to cross roads. Young have cognitive challenges in processing information as well, but are often quick and dart out and small and hidden by things. Disabled at a pure number of crash levels are quite low, but for a risk per person per vehicle kilometres travelled or per person kilometre travelled are quite high, and that's due to challenges of being able to identify safe crossing points, often being trapped and or being forced to cross in unsafe places or travel along the road because they can't get to another area. And intoxicated, and this is our biggest source of death and serious injury for pedestrians, intoxicated pedestrians. Intoxicated males especially are hugely overrepresented in the death and serious injury of pedestrians on our road network. And there are 3 basic strategies, though, when it comes to pedestrians at a high level. We can segregate. We can create malls or freeways where we say, this road user, you're allowed in here, and those road users aren't. We can separation, and we can do that in time or in space. Or we can integrate, and we can have vehicles and pedestrians mixing and sharing the road. So segregation involves, as I mentioned, excluding road users. And freeways, motorways are examples where pedestrians are not allowed in those areas. Now, we do see some pedestrian crashes from vehicle breakdown, people getting out of taxis in the night and wandering around and the like. But the theory of segregation is to not have that road user present. The big freeway there, just for fun. Anybody got an idea of where that is? I'll give a prize for that, Max. It may surprise a few people, I reckon, as well.
That freeway gives me nightmares. That is.
Yeah.
Too many lanes.
I agree. Yeah. Well, we were doing a safe system assessment of the northeast link a while back, and there's a section there that I think has 21 or 22 lanes across as it meets the Eastern Freeway. So it's just a lot of pavement, isn't it?
Yeah.
Any guesses on the country?
Jason's saying Houston, USA, or Rick, China.
They're good guesses, and I would have guessed along the same lines. It's actually not right.
Please don't tell me Australia.
No,
that's right hand side. So
yeah, we're driving on the right. No, they're probably not gonna get it. It's Canada, actually, which is very surprising to me.
Canada, humble old Canada. It's not covered in snow.
Yeah. I think they have a week or two that they don't have snow. And then, of course, the other segregation technique is, excluding another road user, so excluding vehicles through there, or maybe just occasional service vehicle to pick up the rubbish or something like that. So that's the other end of the segregation there. That one, there used to be a road through, and now it's just pedestrians only. Separation in time is this other, another broad technique. And it's really saying that the same bit of road can cater for vehicles or pedestrians, just not at the same time. And your traffic signals, your crossing points are exactly that. We're trying to say, well, okay, pedestrians use it now and then cars use it later. So separation in time. And of course, things like school crossings, very much in that as well. Kids crossing at one time and then vehicles at another. And different ways that we will utilise the road and try to cross there, many different crossing types. We'll give a prize. I'm in a prize-giving mood. The person who can tell me the name of a crossing where you can cross in all directions. Now I'll go with the technical name for it.
What's hit with the scramble crossing?
A scramble crossing is what we would generally call it. It's not its actual name.
That was a bit of interesting trivia. Okay, that's what I would have called it. Is that the commonplace name, or?
Yeah, that's a. Well, you will see that scramble crossing used in a number of documents and the like, but it's not its actual original name. No, I don't think anybody's going to get this one. It's called a Barnes dance.
Oh, yes.
It's what's always been called. I assume somebody called Barnes, Mr. or Mrs. Barnes, was the inventor of it. I don't know whether they call it a dance. It's BARNS. Barnes and Barnes dance. Now, do they have? So interestingly, Barnes dance have some pretty good pedestrian safety benefits. Pretty good safety benefits, but they can cause some challenges in terms of movement efficiency for both vehicles and pedestrians. So you may think, oh, it's got to be better for pedestrians. And you actually find on T intersections like this, it actually usually is. If you have a crossroad and you try and do this, it'll actually be longer time for pedestrians and vehicles, but you get a bit of safety. But anyway, that's a little bit of random trivia for you there. Barn stairs. Separation in space, of course, is where we create refuge islands in the crossing. We have separation with footpaths, sidewalks, and the like. We're providing that space and can provide us some really good safety outputs as well. Max, is there a question?
Have you ever thought if you invented some road safety treatment, it'd be called like the beer dance, which may not, maybe a bit too pejorative?
Yes, it would be an interesting road safety feature, wouldn't it?
It'd be memorable at least.
It would be. The refuge islands there, giving people the ability to stagger their crossing in parts, so to make one distinct movement, one choice, and then pause and make that second choice can be is a really effective pedestrian safety technique. But how big do we need to make that area for them to store? Now, there's some guidance around on this, and you can find it in 1742 Part 2 for those using the Australian standards. You can find it in different Australian documents, and there's sort of 2 metre minimum desirables and a few other things. But as an auditor, remember, okay, we've got, yes, we will look at some standards and guidelines and see what they're saying, but we're thinking broadly, we're thinking outside that, and we're looking at it, and we might go, well, actually, there's a heap of pedestrians crossing at these different times. Is there enough room for them all to store? Okay, so that's one that I think about. Another one I think about is I just am out there and I go, is this big enough for a father or a mother pushing a pram to not have to decide whether they or their baby is in live traffic? That's a good rule of thumb. Some people do it with a bike as well. Like I say, could a bike store in this area without having a wheel into live traffic being clipped or the like? So, we're thinking about the operation of it, the space that's provided, and the dangers that may create. And we do want to think about these different road users that'll be using the areas. So we've got our mobility scooters, and they're becoming more and more popular. And so we've got to think about, what's the length of those? Can they store? Can they get up? So, have we got appropriate pram ramps on either side? What's their desire line? Are we going to trap them onto the road? Are they going to have to be driving on the road? Can we get them across safely? So thinking about that sort of stuff, and the different road users would categorise as pedestrians. So another sort of separation technique that's often talked about is the grade separation or pedestrian overpass style thinking. So in theory, this is a really great road safety technique because obviously we're separating the conflict points. Pedestrians are going to have a very safe way to cross. The reality and the practical implementation of these, in a lot of situations, we see a lot of pedestrians still just crossing the road at grade. And go, because a pedestrian sort of gets to here and they want to go to the BP over there, get their frozen Coke or whatever they want. Yeah, the idea of climbing up that, all along here, down here, down here, down here, back here, down, and then there, it's quite an exercise. That looks a lot easier, doesn't it? So we need, as auditors, to be thinking about how are our road users actually going to use these facilities? Are they going to use it, or are we still going to have lots that are crossing at grade? What's their desire line? And that's what we call a desire line, Well, actually, the desire line's directly over there. There's a barrier in the way. So I'll talk a little more about pedestrian desire lines shortly. But we've got this third category, which was integration. And this is where you mix vehicles and pedestrians. And we can do it through things like a shared zone. So that's a regulatory warning, a regulatory sign across Australia. And shared zone could be 10, it could be a 20. More often, actually, they're 20s, aren't they? In most jurisdictions. I popped a 10 up there because a couple of jurisdictions will do a 10. But most jurisdictions like a 20 km/h shared zone. Who can tell me the road rule? What does a shared zone actually mean? What's the road rule around that? Yes, you need to follow that speed limit or below when you are in a vehicle. But Max, anybody got any comments come in about what a shared zone's rules are?
Give way to pedestrians.
That's it, prize there. Yes. Give way to pedestrians is the rule. So it's essentially across that whole road, the same as a pedestrian crossing in that sense that pedestrians have priority across the whole area. Now, another little question for the group while I'm asking, there's some sort of general design advice for shared zones. So now this is more in our area of those making decisions around the design of the road network and design of these areas. If you're thinking about how do I design a shared zone, there's a principle, a main principle that you should be following. And I'll give a prize if somebody can tell me what that principle is.
Right. Getting lots of beautiful answers from Rick today. Rick Lewis. We've got changing the road surface to make it different from a normal road. We've got some other ones coming in. They generally have an entry threshold, which is true. Speed humps and different surface finish. Tactile surface treatments, landscaping, islands. Make it look different to stand out for drivers.
Yeah, well, let's give it to Rick and whoever said that last one. I mean, it's not just the surface, but the last bit of Rick's comment there was absolutely right. I mean, the surface plays a big role. You want to make it look different, not like a road. I mean, it's a shared zone. So if you have it looking like a road, roads priority is usually given to vehicles. So we need to disrupt that and change the road user that's got priority through there. And so here's an interesting sort of shared zone in regional Victoria in a town centre. And so they've got a shared zone sign there. They've popped in there a give way to pedestrian sign as well. They don't need that, but it's probably an indication that a lot of drivers who do not know the road rules and do not know what a shared zone is, so they pop that there to try to pre-warn. Now, it's interesting that the way they've gone about this, so they've changed the surface, they've got rid of the curbing, so these are good to try to make it look different. It's a different sort of surface there, but you know, if you're auditing this, you might sort of bring up a few things like it's line marked very much like a road. Everything's pretty straight through like a road. So I'll sort of give them some points for what they've done, but I think some small tweaks in the design stages of this could really have enhanced the safety of this area and some get rid of the line marking. We don't want that. That's too road looking. Staggering out parking in a bit of weird ways can help. Some sort of surface treatments. Different ways to disrupt the look of that straight road looking feel to it. Okay, I'll pause there and see if there's any further points. before I jump into some specific pedestrian?
Just some other suggestions for treatments in there. So making sure you've got some physical measures to slow down motorists, making sure the signs are fluoro or very easy to see, and maybe tactile pavers like cobblestones. I think they're a big win, because you don't even like driving fast on those things because you can feel it in your hands. It's uncomfortable. So that's another really good thing to implement.
Yeah, there's a good little test to see if you've, if your shared zone's designed well, which is basically when drivers go in there, they go, am I even allowed to drive in here? That's what you want to get with a shared zone. All right, well, we'll have a stretch break and a fill the coffee up break very shortly. But I'll just touch on a couple of things for pedestrians when you're auditing first. So, slip lanes are a really interesting point on the road network for pedestrian safety. And our industry is in a fair bit of a lather about slip lanes and pedestrians. And there's people who really, there's different conflicting research out there. But the principle is that as you as a driver, or as a driver approaches or is in a slip lane, where are they looking? Well, of course they're looking out this way, because they want to see if they can put the foot down and go. And pedestrians are crossing there. So what we have is a conflict point of vehicle to pedestrians where the driver is not looking at the conflict point. Now that's going to be a bad situation in road safety. If we have, some vegetation there, it's compounding the risk. And interestingly, the pedestrian crossing facility doesn't actually help in these scenarios, because the pedestrian is less alert of vehicles approaching because they have priority through there. And so now we've got a pedestrian that's less alert. We've got a driver looking in the wrong, away from the conflict point. And so it's generally a pretty bad scenario. You throw a sight distance issue in there and it's really starting to become quite a risky scenario. So there's different ways to treat these. I mean, you can try to see if you can get rid of a slip lane or not have it in the design at all. You could have a raised a wombat crossing. So you're raising up that. Now that seems to be quite effective in terms of reducing trauma, because the vehicle's approaching, yes, they're looking out there, but they're also having a look here to navigate and slow down. So they sort of go slowly over that, and that helps out a lot. You could signalize this as well, connect it up, or you could provide nothing and really try to make it. Maybe you could even do some design features so the pedestrian sort of has to have a look up the road as they approach. So you could angle your footpath and your landscaping so they look towards oncoming vehicles. Well, Max, what do you reckon? Should we have a break now?
Yeah, I think it might be a good time to pause there, Ken.
Yeah. It's sort of either now or it'll be at least 15 minutes before we have another good spot. So let's take 5 minutes and we'll be back shortly.
Thanks, Ken.
All right. All good, Max?
Yes, sorry, my kettle took a while to boil.
All good. All right. Well, I'll continue on talking about some of the things we look for as road safety auditors associated with pedestrian safety. And one of them slightly depicted in this photo, it's not bad at all, actually, but the swept path of larger vehicles tracking over pedestrian areas. So new intersections being designed, new alterations to intersections, and really checking how's a large vehicle going to be able to navigate this, and is the back end of the vehicle going to track over a pedestrian area. Now, in those from Melbourne, you'll know that there's an intersection where we recently had there was at least a single, if not double, fatality of pedestrians with the vehicle tracking over it, and there'd been a history of vehicles tracking over that. And so from the design sense, the intersection actually isn't that old in the scheme of things, or the area. We should be trying to pick these things up. We're going to have pedestrians waiting here. The larger vehicle, the back end tracks in a different way. So we want to have a look at our swept paths. Jamie Robinson's going to talk to you a bit about that next module on Friday, and he's going to point out a few specific ways that we can review those things that we call swept path diagrams. So you can see on the design where the larger vehicles back ends will be tracking and going and thinking about how that will play out. One thing that is often commented about road safety auditors is that they're always looking at deficiencies of what's there, but maybe not thinking about what's not there, if that makes sense. Now, I think a lot of auditors are really good at doing both, but if there's not pedestrian facilities, that can be identified in your audit report and your risk rating. So no sidewalk in this instance. Now you can see there it's quite dry and that's all good. But if it was wet, muddy, or you're on a mobility scooter or pushing a pram or the like, really the only option there is to be walking in the bike lane shoulder area, obviously placing that road user at higher risk. So think about that sort of stuff. There you go, another example there of quite a popular pedestrian route as it's building more and more, and pedestrians having to walk there. This one will be even higher risk when it's muddy or in mobility scooter, because they'll really be almost in the traffic lane and a crest, over the crest. Where's the gap in this roundabout sign? Correct. Well done. Even squashed it in there amongst the roads. So think about that. Think about where pedestrians are, where they want to go, how they'll get there. Think about different weather conditions, different devices they will be traveling on, and how they will utilize the road network and the risks it poses. I mentioned this term pedestrian desire line before, didn't I? And the desire lines, simply where the pedestrian currently is and where they want to be. And you draw a straight line. That's their desire line. Pedestrians above any road user do not like to deviate off their desire line. And if you try to force them to, sometimes they will do what you want them to, but sometimes they won't. And here we go. We've got a pedestrian fence. And we've got a decent group of pedestrians who will do what we would like. But we've got this pedestrian who said, nah, from there, I want to go to, Footscray Station in this instance. I'm going to walk out here. I'm going to walk along the road for a little bit, and then I get to the gap and I'll go into the station. Literally, that person is going to walk on the road rather than go that little bit out of their way. And we need to understand that as designers. We can, in theory, go, well, no, they'll cross there and then they'll go along and that's all really good. But the pedestrian fencing in this particular incident, in the way it's configured and the pedestrian design lines, will potentially create some risk in its own right. And pedestrian fencing is fascinating from this perspective. Pedestrian fencing, if you look in most international risk rating methodologies for roads, so IRAP, OSRAP, ANRAM, anything like that, they'll give it a good safety rating. But their safety rating is premised on the idea that people will be stopped from crossing at these dangerous locations, fully stopped, and that nobody will be trapped on the road as a result of it. But we know in a lot of circumstances in the rollout of it, pedestrian fencing pushes us into unsafe territory for some pedestrians. And I personally, I'm very sparing with the use of pedestrian fencing. And as a road safety auditor, I'm always looking when pedestrian fencing is proposed. Could we trap a road user on the road? Are they going to walk along the road now because they don't like, that their desire lines being blocked off, or will we be sure that everybody will be, utilising the travel path that we want? Max, was there a question?
I was just going to add a little anecdote kind of thing. I reckon there's also a little bit of a challenge if you see the pedestrian fencing and maybe it's only 2 or 3 lengths and you're like, I reckon I can get all the way, miss the pedestrian fencing and get where I want in time before those lights go green. So there's that little bit of, psychology behind it as well.
Yes, the McArdle challenge.
I wasn't going to name names.
Yeah, I thought we were naming everything these days. Yeah. but yeah, like, so I as I said, I'm not a fan of pedestrian fencing in most circumstances. I mean, I think sparingly can be used. There's some particular circumstances where I know it's very beneficial, and it's not quite what pedestrian fencing is most commonly used for. One is outside of pubs, nightclubs, and those sorts of establishments. And it's not to stop pedestrians crossing the road at that point. It's actually to contain pedestrians falling out of the pub, fighting and going onto the road, or jostling or whatever it is. And I've done 2 coronial inquiries, reports, investigations into crashes in somewhat similar circumstances outside of drinking establishments where patrons have fallen onto the road. One of them, there was a fight going on of some description, and a group of them fell out onto the road, and one was struck, and the other was an individual coming out and just seemed to sort of fall out there onto the road. Now, you sort of look at these and you're analysing the incidents, and sure, there's looking into the responsible service of alcohol and security and patrons and all of that. But from an infrastructure perspective, we can really say, well, we're going to try to minimise that, and we don't want people doing these sort of antisocial behaviours and those sorts of things. But the reality is there's a lot of that going on, and the pedestrian fencing in those locations to just contain it to within that lower risk area is a sort of no-brainer. So that's one area that really. School gates are a similar one, with kids running out after the ball, or horseplay around and things going on there. A little bit with also public transport stops. They need to be very sort of carefully designed, and that's where auditors can really think through. Okay, pedestrian going from this point to this point, or I'm going from here to here, or I'm trying to get to the station, or I'm trying to get from the station onto that tram, or where am I going to go? How am I going to do that? Am I going to prefer to just walk along the road a bit? So really thinking that through. And to me, it's a wonderful example again of auditors adding value. You don't need to be a technical expert at all here, do you? You don't need to be the person that knows the specific Australian standard for pedestrian fencing height and materials and all of that. You just need to think common sense through how people are going to use this facility, and think through people, walking, people in a rush, people in wheelchairs, people mobility scooters, e-scooters, their bike, the taxi pulling up, the people trying to unload the soft drink out of the vehicles, people parking, are they going to be able to open their doors there? Just common sense, think through all road users and all the activities that they're going to do. I grabbed this one off LinkedIn the other day. I thought it was a good example of pedestrian design. I mean, there it is, the user experience versus the design. And I was talking to somebody, this is quite a while back, from the City of Greater Geelong Council, and they were telling me of sometimes they have these park spaces, and they just see where the goat tracks appear, and then they put the paths where the goat tracks have appeared, which I thought is just wonderful user-centric design, isn't it? Why try to dictate where we want them to go? Let's see where they are actually going, and then provide the facilities there. That's nice way to do it. And lots of pictures here of silly little design lines. Some of them not really a safety issue. Some of them can create safety issues. And sometimes you see that there's a really strong pedestrian design line with no pedestrian facilities at all. This was me out there with a group of engineers. We were looking at cyclists and roundabouts, actually, and how to design for those and different features and things. But I was just noticing how strong a pedestrian design line there was across this island, with no facilities whatsoever provided, and not much consideration. And in terms of a bigger picture perspective, pedestrian design lines, if you separate road users from where they want to be, they will go there. They will still go there. And they'll just start to make their own way. Now, this is an international example, but the road here is separated where people want to travel, and they will cross the motorway accordingly. And we see this, out there with new roads going in, separating areas. And again, at those early stages, you want to be thinking through these pedestrian design lines or travel path areas, and making sure we provide facilities accordingly. That's a bit more of a one we see a lot more in low and middle income country sort of road projects and designs, is quite a focus on the passenger vehicle and less focus on vulnerable road users' safety and their needs and facilities for them. So as a road safety auditor, I mean, you can provide wonderful input into road safety across the world, and especially in some of these countries, with that thinking about what are those needs. So this is a really interesting example, and I use a couple of case studies here from incidents that have occurred, and so we're analysing the incident to try to, as auditors, see this in the design, or pick ways that we can prevent these in the future. So here you see a road, and it's got this is what it looks like from the driver's perspective. The next photo is taken just behind this hazard marker here. And so this is what the driver's seeing now. And now this is what the pedestrian sees. Okay, so who has priority? Who has the right of way here? The vehicle or the pedestrian?
A little bit of back and forth there. varied answers, tossing up whether it is the pedestrian or the vehicle there, Ken.
And that's exactly the point that I want to bring up. It's confusion of priority is a big risk for pedestrians. In this specific case, in this jurisdiction, the vehicle has right of way here. There is no pedestrian crossing signage. There's no pedestrian crossing marking, zebra crossing marking. It is vehicle priority. But when you look at it as a pedestrian, there's a lot drawing you to cross, isn't there? I mean, you've got a different surface, you've got curb outstands, it's attractive to just, when you're out there actually in person, it really draws you to just cross. And you see in this case, these pedestrians have done just that. Even though a vehicle was approaching, the vehicle slowed down, let them cross, okay? Unfortunately, one of the many times, no doubt this conflict has occurred, that this did not stop. And they didn't have priority. They thought the pedestrians would stop. The pedestrians probably thought the car would stop, and we had an incident. So confusion of priority is something you need to be very careful looking at as a road safety auditor and say, is it clear to the pedestrians that they either have right of way or they do not have right of way, and the vehicle's the same thing? And so we get interesting scenarios out there, and people colouring the road crossing point to try to, I don't know, well, it can confuse priority. I mean, T intersections are just a road rule debacle in Australia. I mean, technically, the pedestrian has priority for the vehicle turning in that way and the vehicle turning in that way, but not the exiting vehicle. So literally a pedestrian has priority halfway across the road, but then not the other half. I mean, that's just road rule craziness. The thing is, I'd just like to see this as a clearer, why not make it full pedestrian priority across the road? Now, here's an interesting one, where we have a threshold treatment. And by threshold treatment, I mean that sort of entry gateway into a lower speed environment. And you can see a raised treatment. I like the raised threshold. That's all looking nice. It's very nice. I've also given enough distance probably for one vehicle to prop in there as they turn. But the question is, who's got priority? Now, many of you, eagle-eyed traffic engineers, road designers would go, well, it's pretty obvious that it's not vehicle priority, especially on the exit there, but the piano key line marking we use can, for a pedestrian walking along here, just add to that perception of priority for the pedestrian crossing, to feel that they have full priority across there. Now, in this one, they've used yellow line marking to try to lessen the perception of priority. I think we're overestimating the knowledge of the travelling public if we think that they sort of will be less confused by yellow or less thinking that it's priority. So how could we, though, lessen the look of this as a pedestrian crossing if we don't want it to be a pedestrian crossing? Or obviously, if we want it to be a pedestrian crossing, we should be marking it, signing it, and creating it so it is a dedicated pedestrian crossing with pedestrian priority. But one way you can sort of do this, and suggested as the road safety auditor, is continuation of the colour of the pavement. So continuation, it's look at as a road. Central line marking, if you've got it, continues through. And you can even move that back a little bit. But, that's a lot clearer that pedestrians do not have priority across this. You've still created that sort of threshold gateway treatment. So I do tend to sort of like being just very clear on who has priority in that case. Prize for the person who can tell me where this is. That's a little bit of a harder one, actually. Do you know where this one is, Max?
I can read the sign in the background, but I don't actually know which part of the state that is.
Yes, it's not in Mole Creek, but if you know where Mole Creek is, it probably gives you a little.
Oh, actually, no, I do know. I won't ruin it though.
I was going to
Okay.
say you and I have been. You and I have been there, Matt.
They all look the same to me.
Were there any guesses?
We got Tassie, which is
Yep.
true. Katik. Mole Creek.
No. Oh, there it is.
Launceston. Well done, Declan.
Yeah, it's Launceston Airport. And airports are just a treasure trove of road safety audit training course material. And I think it's something to do with the fact that they have federal jurisdiction. So there's no sort of dedicated, the traffic engineering road design doesn't get potentially the review and the like that I would like to see. Anyway, here's one, it's Lonnie Airport, and you've come off your flight and you're wandering out there, and maybe you're getting picked up and out here, and you sort of, you're running to there, and who's got priority in this section? Well, it's pretty unclear, isn't it? I mean, actually the vehicles have priority again, but these sort of situations, let's just be very clear on priority. I think you're getting the picture on clearness of priority being a really important thing, and using these. So what areas where you're trying to encourage pedestrians to cross at a location, doing it through measures that may confuse their priorities is not a great way to do it. Sometimes in some jurisdictions they call things like this a courtesy crossing. I really don't like courtesy crossing as a concept. I like providing good facilities for pedestrians, but sort of that here's where you should cross and could look a little bit like your priority is not great. So let's just really be clear with it. If you want to do pedestrian priority, you look at your jurisdictional guidance. What does it need? It needs pedestrian crossing signs in most jurisdictions. It needs the line marking, the zebra crossing line marking. So this one, technically wouldn't be compliant because it doesn't have the actual line marking across it. It's got the signs, but this one would be okay. So you can look into your jurisdictional guidance, of course, and look at that. And then just thinking about, correct signage, warning, and everything like that. Lots of examples out there where things aren't right, and then they sometimes don't present immediate risks, sometimes very small risks. Sometimes they're just incorrect, and really, as auditors, we should be picking that up if we can. Here, we see the use of pedestrian crossing ahead signs being used to sort of direct where pedestrians should be traveling, right? Completely incorrect use of that sign. Probably not an issue at all. This one, probably more of an issue, where same area, and obviously there's been a pedestrian signage scheme go in, but we see vehicles approaching a pedestrian crossing, but whoever's implemented this has thought that the pedestrian leg sign is used to tell pedestrians where they should cross, rather than to point at vehicles to tell them that this is a pedestrian crossing. Now, you're kind of probably going, oh my God, how can that actually have been implemented? And as a road safety auditor, you'll find probably a lot of oh my God moments. And you probably see them as you travel around the network. And we are one layer in that defense of this sort of stuff actually being implemented on the road network. Risk here is probably down a bit because it's low speed environment. But nonetheless, a driver approaching that really wouldn't know that it's a pedestrian crossing. Maybe they'll see the marking, I suppose, but yeah. So let's have a look at this example, and I'll ask the group a question. So this is the nice little coastal village in regional Victoria, they've done some line marking down their main street to try to, activate the area, make it feel a little more slow speed or the like. I don't have particular issues with that. I don't think it's going to be hugely effective, but so be it. I'm interested in this pedestrian crossing facility that they've provided, curb out stands, a bit of landscaping, rubbish bin, signs, signage there. So if you were road safety auditing the design of this, okay, the design of it. So it hasn't been built yet, okay, but they've come up with a design. It's got curb out stands, it's got pedestrian crossing, the landscaping. What small tweaks could be made to this design to just make it a little bit safer? Make it a little bit safer. Pop your ideas down there. And Max, were there any other points or questions that came in?
No, just a few comments really, no real questions. Good.
All right, what are we seeing there, Max?
Seen some beautiful answers coming through. Like all the suggestions saying that we should be raising that crossing point, so create a wombat crossing. I think that's a really good suggestion. Was that the one you had in mind, Ken, or did you have something else?
I do love that suggestion. I did say little tweaks to the design. I think that's there's a little more to that. I absolutely love it though. I mean, I'm such a fan of raised pedestrian crossing, wombat crossing, so always a good option to be looking at. What else do we see?
I liked a really good one from Ali here saying relocate bin. So I assume that's the right-hand side bin because it obscures pedestrians, especially small children.
Beautiful. Prize there.
Well done, Ali.
Yeah, I mean, the ideas of raising it, great, and they're going to be wonderfully beneficial across the board. But the small tweak in design here is that vehicles approaching from this direction, so from the other direction where the photo is, their sight line of pedestrians could be obscured by the vegetation and the bin. Especially, yes, those little pedestrians being kids. So your 8-year-old or your 10-year-old who knows enough to cross at the crossing and the like sort of comes out there and it's obscured. So at the design stage, just having the bin on the other side here, if they really determine the bin and the landscaping there, opening up sight lines, just a wonderful little tweak to make it safer. And if you pick these up at design stage, you're in a really good position because it's probably not going to cost anything more, and it can be a safer option. Here's another coronial inquest report we were doing, looking at a death of a gentleman, and the fatality occurred with the pedestrian stepping from exactly where this photo is taken, making one step out there and being struck by a vehicle coming through. Now, I'll show you what the vehicle driver was seeing, and then we'll come back to this photo. So actually, I'll go from here. So this is major arterial, 70 km/h, into a slip lane through there. Sorry, not a slip lane, like a service road lane. Oh, gone the wrong way. And the pedestrian sort of stepped out from here. And go back here. what we see is sort of this pedestrian green light, this thing's ticking away. And if you're out there, it's actually far more grabbing than it is from the photo, but you kind of sort of almost want to step out there. But obviously no priority for pedestrians at this small point. Speeds are high in terms of the entry of vehicles into here. They're going fast, they're moving through there. And yeah, there are some other little issues here. We've got sight lines blocked with vegetation and things, but the actual incident occurred from this side, but that's not great either. But again, it's just sort of trying to think of that pedestrian user experience and can we predict that? Or generally, we know we're going to have pedestrians crossing here, aren't we? So can we do features to slow vehicles on the approach, to give pedestrians priority through this area? Could you have connected the traffic signals across? Could you provide a pedestrian crossing facility? And if we could have got to these early in design stage or the like, we could have certainly prevented that incident from happening. And that's what we're all about, trying to stop them happening in the first place. So a bit of a warning here. The misconception that is out there is that a road safety audit is also a Disability Discrimination Act audit, a DDA compliance audit as well. But the road safety auditor is going to pick up all those DDA issues. Now, the Disability Discrimination Act is a bigger, wider thing than just the roads. I mean, it's buildings, codes, building code. Can everybody, people with all different abilities, in wheelchairs, vision impaired, and the like, can they use all the facilities that are being created? Now, a road safety auditor may look at that within the context of what they're looking at, but absolutely not covering off everything in the DDA Act. So you need to be very clear with your clients on this, because from a client perspective, it can be confusing, and I don't blame them. I just heard audit. I mean, you're going to look at stuff and you're going to audit it, surely, and you're going to think about pedestrians. You're going to do a DDA. You're going to tell us all the things that don't comply, like the tactile ground surface indicators, or the ramp grades, or the height of handrails, and these sorts of things. Well, you're not, unless you see that as a particular road safety issue. You're not obligated to make comments of it. You can even see things that you go, that doesn't comply with the DDA Act, but I don't see it as a road safety audit, road safety issue. Thus, you are not obliged to put it into your road safety audit report. Now, you might, as a little note, being nice to your clients, say, by the way, that doesn't actually meet the DDA Act, but that's not what a road safety audit purpose is. I talked a little bit about sort of colouring crossings. I mean, I don't have a particular problem with this one because it is sort of pedestrian priority sometimes. It's not sometimes. We're yet to see any evaluation that shows benefit from painting your crossings like this, but I'll leave it. I can't. There's potentially a bit of a skid resistance issue and a slippery surface for motorcyclists and cyclists going through here when it's wet and turning and the like. But yeah, much of a muchness. It's often a question that comes up. And here's an example of I must admit I'm no expert in the Disability Discrimination Act whatsoever, but I understand that there should be tactiles leading you down to this point. Somebody will no doubt be able to correct me on that, or if it's not right. I would not be putting that into a road safety audit report myself. And if I did, I might either just do it. And by the way, I just noticed this, some obscure part of an appendix or a to note or the like. But really, I cannot see that will contribute to death and serious injury on our road network. If I'm pointing out 20 or 30 issues of this magnitude, it will cloud the big picture issues that are in there. By no means, I say it's absolutely important that we meet the Disability Discrimination Act. I'm not devaluing that act whatsoever, but that's another exercise. Get your DDA compliance auditor out there, and they'll tell you all of that. They'll tell you the exact ramp grades and this is, you know, too much, and this is the wrong, you know, height, and there's not any braille on your crossing thing, or what, you know. As I say, I don't know the details, but our job is, you know, what are the big picture items that are going to contribute to death and serious injury on our road. Okay, let's do a little exercise, Max. And I think we got a poll that's going to come up in a minute. Let me explain it first, and then here we got an intersection, and what I want you to do is, you know, think like a road safety auditor and predict crashes. Now, this one's obviously built, and the way it's configured, there were 4 serious injury pedestrian crashes in exactly the same crash scenario at one particular location in this intersection. And I'm going to get you to try to guess which one that is by thinking like a road safety auditor. And you're not going to get marked on it, but we'll give you a guess. But the options you've got, because I don't want you to have to be looking for too long here, is crash scenario 1, where we have a vehicle turning left over a pedestrian. Those who know crash diagrams, well, I mean, this is kind of the way we draw a pedestrian in the crash diagram is a dotted line. That's a pedestrian, solid line being a vehicle. So is vehicle turning over pedestrian, crossing at that point is 1. Point 2 is pedestrian crossing there and a vehicle turning over it. 3 is a slip lane there, pedestrian crossing the slip lane and being struck. 4, same, but on this section. And 5, the pedestrian walking along the footpath, the sidewalk there, and the vehicle turning right into that hotel or the like, and striking. So 4 pedestrian serious injury crashes in about a 5-year period at one specific location. Now, Max is going to put up a little poll, hopefully.
Yep, that should have jumped up on everyone's
and you can just
screen.
pick, and you can move it around so you can see the thing if you want. Have a guess, pick your location, and then we'll talk it through.
I had another McArdle psychology theory there, Ken, when you were talking about desire lines. And when you do see that goat track, there's something in the brain that goes, I should be walking that way, even if it's not like a formal crossing point or anything. Like there's something in your brain that goes, other people have done that, I should do that too.
Yeah, maybe we should call it a sheep track. You want to follow like a sheep.
That's right. Okay, we'll give it 5 more seconds. We've really got everyone participated. So 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you for joining in the poll, and I will share the results. Ken, over to you.
Thanks, Max. So we had quite a few going option 1. The most popular was option 2, then 3, then 4. Nobody liked option 5 there, or well, maybe everybody liked it because it was it looked like a safe option. Well, I'm going to just stop sharing that and let's have a chat about them. So the answer, and the majority of you actually got that, it was the most popular one, was location 2 there. Now, I drew all of those little options because they hold some pedestrian risk, right? So you are reasonable to pick other ones because you've identified a risk. But option 2 here point location 2 holds quite a high amount of risk compared to others. And obviously, if you got there to site, you'd be able to see a lot more to it. But we need to, as road safety auditors, be able to pick this from a design. But this is an odd setup. Let's have a look at this side instead of where we're at. We see a pedestrian comes up here, crosses onto the island, and then crosses there. So we have the driver approaching and their crossing is back there. In this one, the island's out here and we've had pedestrians crossing there. So this is even worse in terms of where our driver is looking, because they're looking up there to actually make their maneuver. I was talking about it for slip lanes, and yes, you've got a bit of risk crossing there, and it's not a great scenario. But this one, we're really in a bad situation where they're turning over the pedestrians from the slip lane. So it's just been designed and implemented in a risky way. I mean, this should have gone out to there and then crossed to there. That's the way it should have been designed. So the challenge we've got as road safety auditors is to be able to identify that, offer design, and make recommendations so that that is not built in this way, which in this case has presented in serious injuries to pedestrians. And it's just it is a design deficiency in that instance. Now, this probably gets you well, it may get you to the point of going, oh my God, what if I didn't see it? What if I missed that sort of stuff in an audit? This is pretty serious stuff. Well, first of all, I gave you about a minute to do that. So you have a long time to do an audit. You really can think it through. Second of all, you can do it in a fairly systematic way. You take each approach and you take different road users and you think, okay, all right, I'm a driver now and I'm driving up here and I want to do a right turn. What am I seeing? Where am I going to place myself? That's okay. I'm going to turn right. Is there a fully controlled right turn? Am I going to have a dynamic vehicle obstruction issue with vehicles, propped here, or are they going to be out here? How's that going to work? They're back there. Am I going to, do I have good sight lines to see a vehicle coming through here? And that's just taking that right turn maneuver. Then you go, all right, now I'm going straight. Okay, I'm going straight. What am I seeing? Are lanes lining up? What other features am I seeing? What's the signal phasing? All right, now I'm turning left. Okay, I'm turning left into here. Oh, okay. What are bikes doing? Are they next to me? Have I got a good view of them? Are there pedestrians on this crossing the road here? Can I see them? Okay, there's good sight lines there, but this is a bit odd to go into a service road before there. Is that a good configuration? What risk does that present? Then you go, okay, now I'm going left onto the road. Okay, that's interesting. I'm now turning and there's a pedestrian crossing immediately there, or there could be pedestrians, and you'll identify that. But you'd go through that, each leg, each movement, each road user, and really work through that whole process and trying to identify risks and say, oh, this one's a bigger risk than this other one. Think about that all then during the night, or when it's wet, when it's very busy, when it's not busy. And thinking about it when it's busy is important, because it'll be different. If you're auditing around schools or around sporting areas, and try to think about it when it's got a high number of those road users. Ideally, you get out and you site inspect at the end of school, or when the local footy game's finished, or the like, and seeing it in those conditions. Practical reality is you might be asked to do the audit during school holidays, and you just don't have that ability to do it, but you can try to imagine it, forecast it, and see things. Okay, and there's some recommendations, some features, some pedestrian-specific facilities. We've touched on a few of them, but somebody along the line decided to go with a bird theme in pedestrian crossing facilities. I don't know who it was, and I don't know why, but they did, and people seem to have followed that. So we've got a puffin crossing, which is a pedestrian friendly, intelligent crossing, which is basically, when you walk up to a house at night and the light goes on, it's the same technology, just put into the signals. And so as there's movement on the crossing, it holds the lights red for vehicles until there's no movement on the crossing. Pedestrian, user-friendly, intelligent crossing. And you will see those devices on some pedestrian crossing facilities. So you could recommend that if you're seeing older road users, people lagging on the crossing, or you think actually that's quite a long crossing, and we, are there ways we can do that? Toucan crossings, which is saying that two can cross. I'm not making these names up. Pedestrians and cyclists can cross. Two can cross, and that's, it's not particularly a road safety thing, but it's just giving legal ability for people to ride across the crossing. It's toucan crossing. Pelican crossing is a pedestrian light controlled crossing. So the driver will see a red, and then they see a flashing orange for a while. Flashes orange, and it's a bit, saying if anybody's struggling, lagging, give way to them before it goes immediately to a green. That's a pelican, a pedestrian light controlled crossing. This made some list of top 10 world's funniest road signs. Makes perfect sense to me, but apparently a lot of people find it quite amusing or incoherent. So humped pelican crossing out of the UK. And I'm sure it now makes perfect sense to you. And there are Pegasus crossings. So that's a horse crossing because, there's the height, obviously, to press the button, but there's legal implications of a horse. A horse is a vehicle under the road rules. So it needs its own crossing. And I think there are something like 50 Pegasus crossings in Victoria alone, which is a surprise to a lot of people. No, actually can't be that many. Anyway, there are more than you would expect. So horse is a vehicle. Little bit of random trivia for you. It is illegal to ride a horse when you're intoxicated because it's drink driving. But it is not illegal to ride an intoxicated horse.
I thought you'd given up on that, Ken.
No, I'm going to tell that joke every time I get to this slide for the rest of my life.
I meant the practice of riding a drunk horse.
Riding a drunk horse? No, yes, I think you'd get in trouble if you got a horse drunk. But if it did it on its own accord, okay, I better finish this off. Another thing for everybody to not get too concerned about this, prospect of auditing and the significant dangers that you could potentially miss. There's a few things. The Austroads Guide to Road Safety Part 6A, implementing road safety audits, has these things at the back called checklists. They're going to be changed to prompt lists in their name soon because they prompt your thinking. They're not, you don't just go through each of the dot points and you're done, because you need to think. Hope you can read that. And within that, we cover pedestrians. So there's things for you to think through. So that's going to help you. Second of all, you're going to be out there auditing with senior road safety auditors, people who do this a lot, people who know crash risk, they know these things. They will be able to help you, guide you, you'll see it, you'll understand it, and you'll be able to learn from that and continue graduating through it. So lots of assistance and help there. And you'll be using these prompt lists, checklists, as you go through your auditing process. I think we've got a final quiz, Max, and then we'll let everybody go to do the actual quiz they're going to be marked on. This one they're not marked on. If there is one, there may not be another quiz there today. Oh,
no, there is. Yeah. I've launched it. So which of the following is not one of the 3 infrastructure strategies for pedestrian safety? And the possible answers are prevention, segregation, separation, integration. I'll just repeat that. Which of the following is not one of the 3 infrastructure strategies for pedestrian safety?
Casting your mind back all the way to the start of the session.
Yes.
And Max, just a quiz at the end of this session, is it?
Yes, correct. There's just a quiz at the end of today's module, which is already uploaded on Moodle. So there'll be a bit of time after today's webinar to get stuck right into that.
Okay. I think we almost got everybody had a guess at that one.
There we go. Just end the poll and I'll share the results. Over to you, Ken.
Okay. The majority of you are correct in terms of prevention is not one of the infrastructure strategies. We don't want to prevent pedestrians. In fact, most of the time we want to encourage pedestrians, but from a safety perspective, we either segregate them, being a freeway, a mall, saying, okay, pedestrians, that's your area, and vehicles, that's your area, or we separate them in time or in space, or we integrate them in terms of those shared zones and areas where they mix, but we obviously want to do that at very, very slow speed with clear priority as to which vehicle, which road user has priority. Okay, thanks, Max. And I think that is today's session done.
Fabulous. Thank you, Ken.
I'll get my lights fixed for next time.
That's it. Thanks for all the chats coming through, guys. And we look forward to seeing you all on Friday. And if you haven't got stuck into the research topic, there might be a good chance right now to have a look what you've been assigned and start Googling away. And if you do need any help, please reach out. We're here to help you. So please don't hesitate to get in touch.
Yep. And remember, it shouldn't take you, many days to do this. It should be able to do it in a nice condensed time. Thanks, everyone.
Fabulous. Thanks, Ken.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.